What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
My name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive, and we are back. We are kind of on that post-Easter grind a little bit, but we didn't stop partying, Dave. We had a big confirmation Sunday.
Grind. We're into a good.
Maybe grind's not the right word, but
Yeah. We're just riding the wave.
there we go.
I do have to mention one thing. You have a new water bottle.
I do. Well, I don't know if I've had it on here or not, but it's in a wallet. It's got a little Captain America symbol on it.
Yeah, so noticing.
Girls got it for me a while ago. And
Yeah, it's very, very cool.
I like it. Have you ever had a water bottle?
I have not.
So the beautiful thing is there's actually a straw, but you can actually pour it to drink, or you can sip through the straw, whatever you prefer.
It's versatile.
All in one.
All for $120.
I think it was like 25, 30.
Okay. All right. Well, I have to say one thing. The Braves have won 8 out of the last 10.
Mm-hmm.
They're 2 games out of 500.
Yep.
If you take away the first 7 games, they're 13-8 for the season.
Mm-hmm.
If they keep up that ratio,
Yeah, they'll be fine.
they'll win their division.
I don't know. Division's tough this year.
Yeah, but I mean, if they win out of their 20 games, if they win 12, 13 of those through that season,
Yeah.
they'll make the playoffs at least.
It'll be, yes,
Yeah.
they should at least make the playoffs. But
It'll be interesting just like to kind of like put a mark by this podcast and see like where we are in September.
let's do it.
This, yeah.
A little check mark or something.
Can't remember that. Like, yeah.
But we haven't even done the intro yet.
We haven't done the intro.
We haven't done the like da 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 da.
Oh,
So let's get into that.
Let's do that.
Well, as you could tell, we're just going with it. We're flowing. But Dave just got in town this morning. He went up to North Carolina and saw his son.
Yeah.
We've just been really busy around here, so we're here. We're ready to do it. We're in it, but some of the flows and stuff, we're like, oh yeah, we're supposed to do that.
Yeah,
So
it's like we haven't ever done this before.
yeah.
Yeah, we had a work day and here, which I got in for a little bit of, and
Yep.
then had a staff lunch today, which is really nice. We're coming from that. It's a Tuesday as we're recording this, and just reflecting back though on Sunday, it was a great Sunday, and you had a large part to do with it, with
Yeah,
the
it was-
formation of it, because we had Confirmation Sunday.
Correct.
this
Yeah,
past
it was Confirmation Sunday, and I really had a joy and honor of being able to teach about three or four of those classes, and it's a 13-week group.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to spend about a third of it with them, and it's just a really cool group of kids. I feel like I say that every year I do a confirmation, but this group has been like a group that's kind of walked up the whole time together. Like you saw them in children's ministry, and they're all buddies and pals, and it's fun to watch them kind of grow as a class.
We've got several classes that are coming along now together.
Yeah.
In our children's ministry, going up towards youth. But these, as I looked around, I mean, like Sarah had asked me, "Do you need the names?" Because I'd seen the names for the certificates and stuff. I said,
Yeah.
"No, I think I know every one of those kids."
Yeah.
And I would tell you, lots of times in confirmation, I don't, because sometimes parents will, and I'm not really trying to indict anybody, but like sometimes parents will bring their kids just for confirmation.
Oh yeah, I always plan that there's at least one or two coming out of the woodworks or from kind of outside.
Hey, look, Christmas, Easter, baptisms, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll take people when they come.
For sure.
Those families. I mean, I know all the families, and they're just great. I think we figured out I'd baptized now half of those kids.
Yep.
So you can tell that I've been here for a little while
That's
now
right.
too. So.
Anchored in a bit.
Yeah, so it was a great Sunday, and thank you for all your work and Sarah work and
Absolutely.
the other people that taught that class. I only got to teach it one time, and they were a great group of kids.
That was actually a really cool way that Sarah set it up. Is that me and her were kind of the main teachers, but there was about 4 or 5 other classes that she worked with you. I think Marianne did one, Carolyn and Jenny did one. There's a couple others, and I'm sorry I forgot. Kelly Graham did one, but just it was able to kind of pull a bunch of people in. Which, as somebody who's been around youth ministry for a while, there's major statistics out there that say like if the kids during their children and youth time, if they can get a real relationship with 5 different people in the church, their likelihood that they'll stay in church after they graduate is like 80% more or something like that. It's wild how drastic the change is. You know, it's like they're 30% likely and then they're like 90% likely or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, it is, we just, when you think about your life and your, I guess maybe your spiritual journey, when I think back to my childhood and my youth, I mean, there are some names that jump out of people that I had that were adults that I had friendships with. I mean,
Yeah.
they were mentors, and I looked up to them. But they, they took time to notice me,
Yeah.
and I know my name, and ask, seem interested in what I was doing, and so
and that's something I would
got-
tell anybody in the congregation or anybody listening is like, being a part of youth ministry doesn't always mean you even have to show up to their events or whatever. Sometimes it's just helping create a safe space for that youth to be around and to just get to know them at a greeting level, even of just like, hey, I notice you, I see you. What are your interests? Or, you know what I mean? Like just having those basic relationships goes a long way.
For
But
sure. I think back, I think I've shared this in a sermon before, but one of the people that was very, very influential with me in my journey was this guy named Robert. And he became a youth counselor, one of the youth volunteers. And he also, just because they're hard to find, youth Sunday school teachers, ended up teaching us, like the junior and seniors, at the end of high school, we're together in a Sunday school classroom. And he was a terrible teacher. He was so boring.
Yeah.
He was so boring, but he loved us. I mean, he was one of those Sunday school teachers that would go out and play basketball with us, and he would take us on hiking trips and stuff like that. And he was a park ranger. And so that's where I really saw his heart and his passion. The sign is going out in nature with him and having him, explain about trees and brooks and, all that kind of stuff. So, I think sometimes people have, as you were saying, in their mind that, well, I'm not called to do that, or I can't do that, or I can't teach, because he couldn't teach. But I'm telling you, if you have a heart for youth and a heart for this new generation that's coming up, it's important.
yeah, there's a lot of ways to get involved
for sure.
and stuff like that. But as it was Confirmation Sunday, that actually was kind of a focal point of the sermon you preached.
Intentionally, it
Yeah.
was, and also it was a good bridge to next week. But yes, I wanted to do that. I don't worry about it with these kids, but lots of times, as you said, it's usually about 1 or 2 every time. That you can't have the kids who are just there, and you kind of look at it as this was an ending point, but it's really not an ending point. It's just a stop in the journey, an important one, because they are professing their faith. Confirmation, as I talked about in the sermon, that's a word we. No, I mean, it's used in the vernacular. We use it every day. Maybe not in the way that the church uses it. Usually you think about a confirmation number, like we're going to send you, your coin, we're going to send you a confirmation number that you
and you have to put the code in.
Yeah. So, or you book a hotel room, and I tell the story of showing up one time, and I had a confirmation number. They're going no, I'm sorry, we're overbooked, but I have a confirmation number.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, we sold out, we oversold for this. And but I have a confirmation number. I know, but we've sold out. I'm sorry. There's some, and give us a name, a couple of hostesses. You don't understand. Or maybe I didn't understand what a confirmation number was supposed to
I thought this confirmed me for the event.
for this event. Yeah. So anyway, but in the church, the way we use confirmation, there was, with con. The root word there in Latin means with. So when you hear something like chili con carne, that's chili with meat, okay?
Right.
Con. So you see that whenever you see that in front of another word. But with formation, confirmation, with formation.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have formation of what we're doing through starting here with our nursery all the way through. There's Christian formation that's going on, and then as they're growing, it's usually with a young person, a youth, are standing up promises that have been made on their behalf at their baptism, or is dedicating a child or whatever. They are now claiming for themselves.
Right.
As a 12 or 13-year-old. And so that's what confirmation is, but that's not where it stops. And so one of the ways that I wanted to kind of lean into that is talk about how, as Wesleyan Christians, we think about the journey of faith. And so I talked about the three graces that John Wesley talked about. That it's only one grace, but three ways to think about grace. The prevenient grace that comes before us, that before we were even aware of it, that God loved us. God loved us first. And God has been there before us in ways that we sometimes couldn't see happening. And so for those, particularly those that were baptized as babies, we think of that's a real act of prevenient grace that God is working within in that child, and the parents make promises at that time. So then you have justifying grace, and that is the grace that saves us. That requires us saying yes to God. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
Right.
Okay, that's prevenient grace, God loving us. But then accepting that grace, and accepting the salvation that is there for us, is justifying grace. And so then he has, and lots of times, and I'm not picking on any churches or denominations, there's a lot of emphasis on that part of like, have you prayed that prayer, that sort of things. And I'm not saying that in any way that it's not important,
right,
but it's also not the end. That's not the stopping point.
Right.
And so there is this other thing, other part of grace called sanctifying grace or sustaining grace, or John Wesley lots of times used perfecting grace. We get kind of weird with the perfecting part of it, but that's not what he was meaning in the way we think about perfectionist or whatever. But sustaining grace, sanctifying grace, and to me, just in a nutshell, it's like growing up as a Christian.
Yeah.
It's not, you just don't stay the same place. You continue to grow. You continue to learn about God's word, to learn about the church, to have acts of service and see where your real gifts connect with the church as we continue to grow up. And so that's, I used three words to talk about it, three words that we use a lot of time in the church too, and that was relationship, covenant, and journey.
Yeah.
Those three words. So let's talk about them. Relationship. Okay. So, do you have a personal relationship with someone?
Right. I do.
You do?
Several people.
Yeah.
Family, kids. I mean, Jesus.
Spouse. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but like for you and Rachel, or you and me, or, you and your best friend, whoever that is, you talk to them quite a bit, right?
Yep.
Spend a lot of time with them?
Spend a lot of time with them, know their mannerisms, know the things that they do. And actually, it's interesting you bring it up that way, because when I was talking to the confirmands, I was talking to them about that were part of the relationship with Jesus, and I explained it kind of like as a best friend is like when somebody calls, like you can almost know who they are even if you didn't hear the voice, because you know the way they might say something or the words that they would use in certain spaces. It's like you want to get to know God and know Jesus in a way that kind of feels like that a little bit. It's like you know by voice, by how they call, that's, what is it? You'll know the shepherd by his voice.
Right. Yeah. You know the sound of their voice and the tone of their voice too. I know Teresa, when she's not pleased with me, that's kind of a different tone.
David.
But within that, and the other part of like relationships is that, one of the things that in the journey of faith, it's just not this, going up all there's peaks and valleys, there's ups and downs, just like there are in relationships. Just like the people that I am closest with, we're way past the superficial stuff. We can be honest with each other. There's times when we've been angry with each other or hurt by one another, and so we had to ask forgiveness or get forgiveness and that sort of things. And that just really made the relationship more solid.
Right.
And because there's some kind of conflict. If you care about the person, you're going to sit and talk and work it out and find some resolution, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the key defining factors of good relationships, and not just like romantically, but even friendships or working relationships is when there are spaces that you find tension or disagree, that you're willing to work through those.
Yeah.
And you said it well. I think sometimes relationships do kind of have these ups and downs where they feel, easy and lights and sunshine, rainbow stuff, and then sometimes it does feel hard and it feels like work, but they're both valuable times to develop that relationship.
Right. Yeah. When you run into a hard spot, it does. There is some work, but it's worth it because you value the relationship and
Yep.
what is there and the history that's there.
Right.
So moving that into the arena of like, what is it to have a relationship with Christ?
Yeah.
Relationship with God, that realizing, and I just read to you what I wrote and put on the screen. We grow in our relationship with God by spending time in prayer, reading scripture, and living out our faith through love and service. As we open our hearts to God's presence, we come to know his grace more deeply and are transformed by his spirit. And so, all of those things that we've been talking about that apply, that they can work with our relationship with God. Spending time with God to know God's gentle touch,
Yeah.
and to be able to hear his voice, maybe not in an audible way,
Right.
but your heart feels it, like whether this is right or wrong, or knowing what you're leading, trying to discern something. The other thing I wanted to stress, I tried to a little bit on Sunday. I only had like 10 minutes to preach on Sunday, by the way. Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed, there was a moment in the service where you went, I'm talking really fast, aren't
Yeah,
I?
I had to slow down. Yeah, I think I saw somebody's expression like, "Okay, I need to slow down." But yeah, I knew it was an intentional, at least maybe a little bit shorter podcast too. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's you and I talking, so who knows? Because I knew it was we'd have all the parts of the confirmation service in there.
Yeah.
So it was already planned to be a shorter service, but not quite as
Yeah.
little a time as we had. But one thing I wanted to stress was like there are times when we kind of hit roadblocks in our relationship with God too, and so we find ourselves doubting, or we prayed for something and we have prayed with all our heart and soul and might, and we just feel like it's hitting the ceiling,
Yeah.
and that can cause us to struggle, and so how do we then continue on in our relationship with God when it just seems like He's not there?
Yeah.
And so. That's a real thing, and it's a normal thing, and I think it's something we can work through, and then find that God has been there with us all the time. Maybe just not in the way that we think, that it thought it was going to be. He's kind of met us in a different way.
Yeah, and I think that's where it becomes important. And again, something we stress to the kids is like being in Christian community is important, because I think sometimes when our faith feels, like you said, it's just everything we're saying is just hitting the ceiling. It doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. Nothing feels like it's going the way that either we hoped or that we felt God was trying to lead us in. I think it's always been important to just have those people that can come beside you. And sometimes, the idea of being able to kind of help somebody along, that lean on me song, when you're not strong, that type of stuff, where you have that somebody that can be there to help remind you and keep you grounded, but also that might can drag you a little bit if you need to be dragged.
Mm-hmm. So the second word that I used in those three words of relationship, covenant, journey, the second one was covenant. And so there was a lot of vows and promises as part of the service today. A lot for the confirmands, but some for the parents and some for the whole congregation.
Right.
And so a covenant, it's not the only place we use that word either, but I think probably in the nature of the church, we kind of think of that as a sacred promise. I mean, there are promises, and then there are sacred promises. Promises we ought to take really super seriously.
Yeah.
But one of the ways that I think about it, because I live in a neighborhood that has some covenants, and
HOAs.
Huh?
HOAs, man.
HOAs, love, and you can love them or hate them.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, within the Christian life, if we stand in covenant, it is within the community, and it is between God and us too. That there are certain ways that we can live. So in the in my neighborhood, there are covenants. They're not as strict as actually some other neighborhoods I lived in. But like, you shouldn't have like an RV parked in front of your house. I think that makes a covenant. And there's certain things about like what colors you can paint your doors and things like that. Keeping your yard. And so those are things that we agreed upon, that we're going to live in this community together, and it's going to make it better for everybody. We're all kind of on the same page. And in the Christian faith and the Christian journey, there's that too. There's some rules to follow.
Yeah.
And sometimes we might bump up against them, and sometimes we might not like them, and sometimes we might think that they don't apply to us. But yet that is part of the covenant relationship within the church, of how we treat one another and treat others.
Well, and I think that's part of the beauty of our membership vows, is they kind of remind us like, hey, here are the things you're committing to.
Prayers, presence.
Prayers, presence,
gifts,
tithe.
gift service, witness.
All that stuff.
Yeah, and so, that was said several times this past Sunday. But yeah, there all of those things. That's what we have agreed in the covenant that we're working in together. However, I do think a better word for it is... in the covenant is to think about the covenant between two people that are married.
Yeah.
You make those sacred, holy promises that this is going to be a relationship that's worth it. Now, we're called the bride of Christ, so I've always thought that kind of worked. And, you wear a wedding ring as a symbol and sign of that covenant. And, it is, and so it is this life that you're going to have to work on, this life of love that you're going to have to work on, and stay in covenant with your the rest of your life till death do your part. So, I think covenant's a real important word for us to keep together. Sometimes we get all about the relationship and my buddy Jesus and all that stuff, but within that there's also rules to keep.
Right.
There's covenants to keep as well.
Yeah, and I think the way we articulate them is important too, as like covenant and promise and stuff like that. Because I know there's some people, and maybe somebody who's listening, I'm not one of these people, but like who hear the word rule and go, I don't want to fall into that. But I like to think of the covenant side of it as like signing a contract with your team or whatever. Like, it's like I'm committed to working with the people around me and doing my part to further, in this instance, the kingdom of God. You know what I mean? Like, I want to use my talents alongside you and do the best we can to glorify God. And that comes with a few things that I should be doing to be a part of that team. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. I mean, and like if you're playing a game, we're getting way down in the metaphors today, but I mean, like you have rules to keep there from being chaos.
Yeah.
And but the covenant and promises and commandments that we have are not just about playing a game. They're about doing life and living life in its abundance. They're not there to be mean. They're not there to harm us, but to actually give us life. Yeah. And give us life in abundance. And so, leaning into them, knowing about them, following them can help us. Now, when we turn these commandments and covenant into like legalistic rules, it can become a slippery slope for us. And there are people that want to do that in a judgmental way.
Absolutely.
But I think in the general sense that we were talking about, and hopefully was expressed in church on Sunday, is just living in the covenant relationship is every step of the way God wanting us to have life.
Yeah. And I think you articulated that well. I just wanted to make sure, because I know some people who, and I don't know if you are listening to this or whatever, but I know people who would have heard the word rule and gone, yeah. You know what I mean? Just
I'm not a huge rule follower myself, as you might notice. But
I was actually talking about you.
What are the rules so that I can walk right up that line?
That's right.
But but anyway, so let's move into the last word, and it's one we've mentioned a lot, because to me it defines faith a lot for me, at least in this journey, because it is a lifelong journey. Yep. And it's not the old, I've got a T-shirt that says that, it's not the destination, it's the journey. It is part of the destination here too, but the journey along the way, and a common refrain. Actually, I'm working on a song called "In Between" right now because it's such that concept is so resonating in a part of my life. Is most of our life is lived in the in between. We are on this journey with people, and I love the high points. We have. This Sunday was one. Easter Sunday definitely was. Maybe that's why we're feeling a little chatty today. Is because it's been kind of a high point for us. But there's going to be some hard days too.
Yeah.
Hard times as well. And but most of the days are going to be kind of in between. And so on this journey, and I was very selective about the image that I went with it because I wanted a group of people on a journey together, because I do not think the Christian life. I'm sure it probably can be lived out as just by yourself, but I think it's designed to be, and it's best designed in a community with a group of people walking towards a common group, helping people each other along the way, nursing each other's wounds, giving water when people need water, receiving water when you need it. It's just and so. That journey of faith that we're on. Let me see what I wrote about the journey, if I got my note on that.
Well, while you're looking for that, like I think of I think I actually heard Sarah tell a story one time of when she was hiking and she was going up and down. It was like for like a fundraiser or something with an organization she went with, and they were hiking, and she was just talking about how much easier the hike was when you had somebody with you. Yeah, like you're still doing the same steps whether you're alone. But how much easier it was just having somebody to walk with you, to vent to, like, I hate this part of the climb or whatever. Like sometimes there's just, as you were just kind of saying, like there's just benefit in having somebody who's on that journey with you. And I think to me, that's one of the beautiful things about church.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah. Yep. So this is what I wrote about it. The Christian life is like a journey marked by continual growth, learning, and transformation as we walk with Christ, trusting Him to guide us through every season. And so those words, continual growth, learning, and transformation, is sometimes, even seasons of doubt, even seasons of which seem maybe kind of dark, they can be seasons of growth when we get on the other side, because we've learned something that we didn't know before, and you couldn't have gotten there without going through it.
Right.
And that's where transformation takes place too.
Yeah.
It's like a chrysalis, a butterfly busting out of a chrysalis. They've got a, the old thing, I've probably heard this story, if you see a butterfly trying to bust out of a chrysalis before it becomes a butterfly, there are people that see that, say, oh, let me help the butterfly out, and they'll cut it open so it can get out quicker.
Right.
But it actually needs to do that to strengthen its wings so that it's able to fly when it's doing that. So, the journey of faith, it's not unlike that. And, this past week was wonderful that they have this marker. There's lots of other things that are coming along the way this spring with graduation Sunday, which is in a couple of weeks. And we got some graduates, that are important to look back and say, I accomplished something, I got to this point, but then life continues. You become a lifelong learner and, a lifelong follower of Jesus as you go through confirmation. So,
I think that's the beautiful thing about confirmation. And I'm, again, just really proud of these kids. And this is such a good step. I always tell them it's essentially taking your faith into your own hands, because a lot of them were baptized as infants and stuff like that. So it's kind of them taking ownership of their faith journey.
That's one thing I've said to kids. I think I said it to them when I met with them that day. This is one of the first really kind of adult decisions they're going to make.
Yeah.
It is not your mama's faith. It's not your preacher's faith.
Right.
It's your faith.
Yep.
And you get to make the decision of whether or not you're ready to do this. And if you're not, it's okay.
Yep.
There's reform. If you feel like I'm not quite settled on some things, I feel like I think that's fair. And I've had students along the way who have said that. But
Me too.
so it's it is. it's an important day for them.
For sure, for sure. Well, Dave, thank you for kind of imparting more wisdom as it pertains to this stuff, and always good conversations here that we get to have. And you were wrong. This was not a shorter one. This is one of our older averages.
Yeah, we usually get around 30 minutes, and this is going to be over because I'm going to tell you what we're doing this week, and then we'll sign off. But I rolling out of confirmation, our May series is called Faith Works. And so if you could think about the different ways in which you could hear that word, faith works, in that faith works. You know, if you have faith, you know, it works. You know, or faith works is like, what are the works of faith?
Right.
What do they look like? And, you know, how's the fruit of the Spirit and how that works out. And then, you know, other words, we're going to be unpacking those words as we kind of work through. I think most of my texts are going to come from the book of James.
Yeah.
Because James is the one of faith without works is dead. You know, and so, you know, you're kind of saved to do something. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, that's where we're headed the next 4 weeks, I guess it is. And I'm excited to preach it. I think it's going to be a good sermon. I think I'm going to enjoy preaching. Hopefully people enjoy listening to it.
Well, that's what's coming up. That's what the topics of the podcast will be in the next few weeks as well. So we're excited to get into that with you guys. If you have any questions, any comments of anything we've talked about today, you know where to drop it. Drop it in the comment section below on the Facebook, the YouTube, anywhere that you would take or wherever you're taking this in from. But without any further ado, guys, we love you. We appreciate you. God bless. Have a great day.